Madrid, in late September, has a particular kind of quiet. Not silence, just hush. The streets still hum with the tourists and mopeds, sure, but the light softens, the cafes stretch their afternoons, and the city breathes in something slower. That's the rhythm I needed when I moved here. After the divorce, after the lectures stopped, after I realized I'd been talking about truth and beauty for a decade, while slowly becoming someone who no longer believed in either, I didn't come here to be reborn. I came here to disappear gently. And then Lena showed up. She came to the book club on a Thursday. The theme that month was obsession in literature. Flaubert, Highsmith, Kawabata. I'd spoken too long about the talented Mr. Ripley, about the way love becomes hunger when it goes unmet for too long. She was sitting across from me, legs crossed, a small notebook in her lap. When I mentioned the line, "I always thought it would be better to be a fake somebody than a real nobody," she wrote it down. Not typed, handwritten, in ink. Afterwards, she approached me on the stairs. "You talk like you're remembering something," she said, "not analyzing it." That was the first moment I noticed her eyes, light gray, almost silver in the hallway light, the kind of gaze that doesn't blink when it should. I smiled. Maybe I am. We got coffee that night, just coffee. But something about her rhythm pulled me in, fast. She was articulate but unpolished, like someone who had read too many books alone and didn't quite know how to be ordinary. I liked that. I liked that she seemed to really see people, even if it was uncomfortable. She asked questions like, "What scared you when you were 10?" And, "Do you think guilt has an expiration date?" No one had asked me anything real in months. So I answered. The following week, she was waiting outside the philosophy library at the Complutense. I hadn't mentioned it in the book club. I hadn't even said I still used the library. She smiled like she hadn't done anything strange, just handed me a folded poem, something she'd written, apparently, and said, "It's not good, but it's yours." Inside was a sonnet about shadows in conversation with stone. She knew I studied metaphysics. I didn't ask how. I just thanked her. We weren't sleeping together, not yet. But there was an intimacy to it already. Slow emails, walks without purpose, lingering glances that neither of us acknowledged out loud. Lena made it easy to believe that connection didn't have to be earned, that you could meet someone and skip the awkward scaffolding. Go straight to the marrow. She told me once, "I feel like you've been in my head since I was a girl." I should have flinched. I didn't. I wanted to be needed, and she needed me in a way that felt holy. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. I was necessary, or so I thought. It happened slowly. Or maybe it didn't, and I only told myself it did because I needed to believe I had time to stop it. Lena began appearing more frequently, at the cafes I went to, the parks where I read, even the laundromat near my flat in Chambéry. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Madrid is a city of overlapping routines, after all. You turn enough corners and eventually someone turns with you. But then she started quoting me not in passing, word for word. Something I'd said weeks ago about the difference between solitude and isolation. A line I used once in a private email. A remark I made in bed, not during sex, just one of those drifting midnight conversations we thought no one would remember. She remembered everything. It would have been flattering if it hadn't felt like theft. I tried to set boundaries. A polite message saying I needed space that week. She responded with a photo of a sculpture I'd once told her I loved. The Rodin bust in the Recoletos exhibit. She captioned it, "Some things are too beautiful to keep at a distance." Another day, I didn't reply to her texts for a few hours. She showed up outside my building, no coat, trembling, saying she just needed to make sure I was real. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I let her in. I always let her in, because I kept confusing fear with pity. and pity with something close enough to love. One night, we sat across from each other at a narrow tapas bar, rain tapping the windows like fingertips on glass. She wasn't eating, just watching me. Her face unreadable. "You're quieter lately," she said. I shrugged. "Just tired." "You've been thinking about leaving, haven't you?" I paused. She smiled, slow and sad, as if I'd just confirmed something she already knew. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a copy of Steppenwolf. Inside was a note. Not to me. To someone named Emil. A different name. A different story. When I looked at her, she didn't explain. She didn't have to. I began to wonder if I was the only man who'd sat across from her like this. If I was the only life she had melted into until she could no longer tell where she ended and someone else began. The unraveling began on a Tuesday. I received a call from a man named Javi, a fellow lecturer from my old university in Salamanca. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He said, "You're seeing someone named Lena?" My chest tightened. "I was." He hesitated, then said, "She came to one of my lectures once, months ago. Said she was researching a paper on postmodern trauma narratives. Then she started emailing, showing up. I thought I imagined the obsession, but then she stopped." There was a pause. "I guess I wasn't her type." I ended the call, sat in the dark for over an hour, and realized I hadn't fallen into something. I'd been selected. That night, Lena knocked on my door again, smiling, carrying 2 coffees, both with oat milk, just how I took it, though I'd never told her I preferred it that way. She leaned in, like nothing had changed, and for a moment, I let her. Because the part of me that had always been a little broken, a little too hungry to be seen, still wanted her eyes on me, even if they weren't really hers, even if they'd belonged to someone else before. It took me a week to open the envelope. A plain manila folder, hand-delivered by Javi the next time he was in Madrid. He passed it to me in a cafe, slid it across the table without looking me in the eye. "Do what you want with it," he said. "But be careful, she doesn't let go." Inside were 4 printed pages, stapled neatly. Clinical notes, psychiatric evaluations, names I didn't recognize. One of them had been redacted with black ink so aggressively the paper tore. Lena's real name wasn't Lena, and I wasn't the first. There'd been another man, in Galicia, a photographer. She'd shadowed him for months, claiming to be his apprentice, eventually moved into his building. Never officially invited, just present. Constant, predictable. He didn't report her until she broke into his darkroom. No harm was done. No property damaged. She only wanted to understand the process, she said. Another file detailed her time in a wellness facility outside Oviedo. 2 months. Voluntary commitment. Diagnosis. Attachment-related trauma. Obsessive patterns in relational behavior. No record of violence, just intensity, just devotion. I was just the next chapter. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, the folder on the table beside a half-drunk bottle of wine. I kept imagining her handwriting. Her voice whispering phrases I once thought were mine. Original. Shared only with her. I thought about the poem she gave me that first night. "It's not good, but it's yours." Except it wasn't. I found almost the same phrasing, line for line, in an old university literary journal, published under a different name. She'd been performing me from the beginning, mirroring my rhythms, reflecting my wounds, giving me just enough of myself to make me feel seen. And I let her. I welcomed the echo, because after the divorce, after everything, I needed someone to say, "You still matter. even if it was a lie. Especially if it was a lie. I packed a bag the next morning, quietly. No sudden moves, just my notebooks, a few clothes, my laptop. I left no note, only turned off my phone. Booked a room in Cuenca, small, forgettable, 5 hours away. She must have known. Because the knock came just as I zipped the suitcase, not frantic, not loud, just rhythmic. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat still, back to the wall, and listened. Her voice was quiet through the door. "I know you found it, the folder, the things they said." Pause. They always say those things, because they don't understand what it's like to need someone that much. Another pause, a soft exhale. "I wasn't pretending with you. I don't care what they wrote down. I wasn't." Then silence. When I finally stood to look through the peephole, the hallway was empty. That afternoon, I boarded the train to Cuenca. No one followed. But I kept my eyes on the window the entire ride. Not because I feared her showing up, because I feared missing her if she did. That's the worst part, isn't it? Realizing you were complicit. That I saw the cracks, the heat behind her gaze, the way she always pressed just a little too close. And I stayed. Because I liked it. Because for a little while, her obsession felt like proof I was still worth obsession. I never believed in soulmates, but I believed in being chosen. And she chose completely. I stayed in Cuenca for 10 days. Long enough for the fear to loosen, but not long enough for the memory of her to feel unreal. I filled the time with long walks along the cliffs, espresso in empty cafes, and late nights trying to rewrite lectures I no longer planned to give. I told myself the silence was healing. But silence doesn't heal. It sharpens. By the end of the first week, I was checking the hallway outside my hotel room before I left each morning. Not because I thought she'd be there, because part of me wanted her to be. On the 11th day, I returned to Madrid. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't resume my routines. I went back to the flat like a stranger returning to someone else's life. The plants were half dead. My inbox was full, and taped to the inside of the door was an envelope. No name. Inside a ticket. One way, Lisbon. Departure. That night. I should have panicked, called someone, thrown it away. Instead, I sat on the couch and stared at it. She wasn't asking me to run away with her. She was telling me she already had. I didn't go to the station. I didn't need to. By then, I knew what this was. Not love, not even delusion. It was a script. One she'd acted out before, one she'd revise and recite again. I was just another scene, a line to be rewritten in someone else's voice. That evening, I went to the book club. I hadn't been in over a month. They were discussing the end of the affair. How fitting. I didn't speak. I listened. Watched people argue over whether obsession is romantic or pathetic. Then, someone said her name. Lena said that once, didn't she? The room paused. Another woman nodded. She left, though, moved to Portugal, said she wanted to live by the water. I felt something heavy and stupid move in my chest. Not grief. Recognition. She had already rewritten me. The goodbye came anyway. A week later, I was walking through Retiro Park when I heard someone call my name. I turned and saw her standing by the lake, wrapped in a coat I'd never seen before. Her hair tied up, different, almost elegant. She didn't approach, just smiled like we were old friends who'd passed peacefully out of each other's orbit. "I wanted to see you happy," she said, like it was the simplest sentence in the world. I just didn't know how to leave it alone. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to protect. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I hope someone loves you the right way." Then she turned and walked into the crowd. I didn't follow. I never saw her again, but every time someone loves me too fast, I flinch. Maybe because I know I liked it. I let her in, and she never really left.